can you just tell us, like, how is it different from so many other breathwork practices? Because I saw so many of these testimonials of your clients talking about how just that breathwork.
The normal part of the aging process is, yes, there is less muscle mass. Our metabolism doesn't slow until we're in our mid-60s, and it's a really young gas. It was only discovered in the 90s. So this nasal nitric oxide increases our oxygen uptake. And then also if we're breathing here, this part of the lungs, and then up here, that it's really shallow and you will always be in fight or flight. If you're breathing fast, then you actually need to breathe less.
Author, movement coach, and the creator of the MAP system, our guest today on the Settle or Be Better podcast is Dr. Julie, who's going to be talking to us about building strength and confidence for women over 50. So welcome, Dr. Julie, and over to you. Why don't you begin by telling us a little bit about your personal health and well-being story and your current work?
Thank you. Well, first of all, thank you for having me here on the podcast. And so my movement journey and story really began from the creative industries. So I'm very multi-passionate, and my background is as a filmmaker. And in my kind of late 20s, early 30s, I made several documentaries about people who move. So this started off actually filming skateboarders in Southern California, but these were skateboarders who would find swimming pools, empty them, drain them, clean them, and then skate in these round bottom pools. And prior to that, I'd been mainly doing film work about artists, and I'd been doing very experimental animation work. And what I loved was the creativity and the use of the imagination that these people were doing. So it's just seeing these kind of, and a lot of the times these were very derelict, rundown, empty places. And they would go in and through their imagination and their body have these incredible experiences. And then after that, I was back in the UK, and parkour had just started to come onto the horizon. So parkour, or free running, some people know the name, and some people even know the name through the film Yamakasi as well. It's really, how do you move through the environment? How do you overcome obstacles to get from point A to point B? So this started to be seen in the media, and it was always in a kind of urban setting, very spectacular, jumping from rooftops or people vaulting walls and railings, and this idea of like, oh, it's kind of Spider-Man, but it's real and it's not special effects. And I ended up doing a practice-based PhD. So it was a visual anthropology framework about this kind of very young parkour scene in the UK. And I never had any plan to move. At that time, I was 34 when I started the research project. But when you're around people who are moving all the time, it makes you want to move. But I felt really shy to try, because I had really good credibility with the people I was filming because of this prior film project with the skateboarding, the pool skaters. So it was kind of, and I was older. I was a 35-year-old woman spending time with this group of mainly young men in their, but they were all men, but in their early 20s. And they were of that kind of self-taught natural athlete kind of category. And even though everyone was very encouraging for me to like, oh, give it a go, Julie, or oh, Julie, you should do parkour, I didn't trust them as coaches or teachers to guide me. And I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to start. I didn't know what this, I enjoyed looking at this thing. I enjoyed seeing the imagination and creativity of this thing, and then kind of observing their journeys, and also seeing that the everyday life of someone who trains parkour is not spent on rooftops. It's spent like jumping on the pavement or the sidewalk, or finding small things to do, and you do them many, many times. But then a couple of people joined this group, and they were older. They were in their I think they were like mid-20s or late 20s, but one guy in particular had a background as, he was a personal trainer. He'd been a professional footballer. He was a swimmer. And I trusted him. I had been a very strong athletic teenager, And at age 16, I then, like when school finished, I stopped moving. So I kind of thought I was still athletic and strong. And then when I tried parkour, it was like, oh my God, I'm terrified of everything. And I don't have the strength to do these things. Like you would touch the top of my legs and everything was soft. Whereas sat in a car next to the people doing parkour, you would like feel their leg next to yours and it was like a brick. Oh, okay. Like there's like underneath this, the muscle isn't there. So I was scared and physically not strong. But through always being made to feel welcome by some of the coaches and then by people in that parkour community who became friends of mine, I just carried on moving. And then with no ambition, with no plan, just the joy of movement was what I loved. And also living in London, it made me reimagine my landscape. It made me see different areas in different ways. For example, I would walk home from the tube or like the underground train station to where I was living, and I would go past an area that I always felt uncomfortable and didn't feel very safe. But then that area became one of our parkour training grounds. And then I became to really love this area. I was like, oh, I love that wall because it has this slope, so I can really make it very gradual, how I work up to doing the thing I want to do. And the placement of these railings next to those stairs. Oh, I love it. So I started to have different relationships with different spaces, and I loved that. And then I just kind of fell into, there were opportunities for me to go through some of the coaching certifications that were being created, and they were quite young at that stage. And being one of the older people in the community, it was also very interesting for people to learn from someone like me who wasn't talented or gifted or ambitious with any of this, just kind of doing it and enjoying it, to see well what's my feedback as well, and does this work for me? So I got my level 1 adapt coaching cert. I think I was 42 or 43, and then I moved into I was following MoveNat through the natural movement world, and then I had the opportunity to go and film some retreats in Thailand, and then when MoveNat created the certifications, I then again was kind of invited and had this opportunity to go through that. So I then became MoveNat level 1, level 2, aquatics, combatives, and then I did another parkour certification here in America with Apex, and I'm an animal flow instructor, and I'm also an oxygen advantage breathwork coach. So there's never been a plan, and it all came through opportunities from creative projects, and now they just all meet together.
That's amazing. And the movement experience that you have, it's so interesting. But the most fascinating thing to read about you was that you've been the first person in the world to have ever done a Parker PhD, right? Like, I mean, that's just amazing. I was so amazed by that. I was just telling my mom that right now before the podcast. And I've just shared your profile with her, and I hope that she can start doing those little movements, Max, you talk about. So this has been really amazing to know a little bit about your story, and I can't wait to dive deep into our episode today. So to begin with, my first question to you is that how did your approach to your personal training change when you entered your 50s? Were there some things you were doing differently? And, did you realize that as a woman above 50, were the needs of your body changing, and how were you addressing that through your training?
Yeah, and I definitely noticed the change, because so as a woman when we're younger, we have our normal menstrual cycle, and then we go through perimenopause, which is when there starts to be a break. And what happens is that our hormonal profile changes. So, and I'd never really knew about perimenopause very much, or hadn't heard very much until I was in it. And then you're like, what the hell is going on? Like, why am I suddenly waking up crying? Why do my joints suddenly feel like the Tin Man? Why some days I have loads of energy, and then the next day I have none, and I have no motivation? And why am I suddenly forgetting things? Like, why? And it's this wonderful hormone called estrogen that has been taking care of so many things in our body all the time, and we just take it for granted, like it's just there, we're doing life. And then what happens is that perimenopause takes us on this hormonal roller coaster. So some days your biochemistry may be in a really this is going to make you really happy and strong and motivated and recover fast and your mind is sharp. And then the next day you may be at the bottom of the roller coaster and you have no idea why, and you can't predict it. It's not like, oh, well, it's Thursday the 5th of March tomorrow, therefore I will be. You really don't know. And what it does is it reveals to you really what your underlying health, where it's at. And so luckily for me, I have some very close friends who are health coaches. So I had people to ask, and I had people to say like why suddenly have I got injuries that don't heal? Whereas before, all my injuries heal. I do the things. If someone, if this hurts, and then it's like, okay, Julie, this is what you need to do. You do this, and then it gets better. I would follow the rules, but I wouldn't get better. And basically, how our body deals with stress changes because we don't have these hormones that were helping us along, to put it in really simple terms. So what I had to do was really look stress management in my life. And our body doesn't distinguish between a nutritional stressor, an overtraining stressor, an emotional stressor, cognitive, financial stressor. It just knows, can you meet the demands being asked of you? And therefore, where are your cortisol levels? So for me, it wasn't that I had to change how I trained. I had to start changing my cortisol triggers and identifying what they were or are. And so for me personally, so I was doing a lot of things that men would tell me were good for me. And these were male coaches who were really esteemed in their movement world, and with no bad intentions. I mean, they were saying, it's like, okay, you just need to do more fasting. You need to go to CrossFit. You need less carbs. You need this. And actually it was the complete opposite. It's like, if they said you need less carbs, actually what I needed was more carbs. If they said you need more intensity in cardio, like, no, actually, I don't. I need more sleep. I need more nervous system resets. I need to do really slow, calm, heavy lifting. Like, that's what I needed. So for me, then it was also identifying things like, so I would wake up normally and have like 2 cups of black tea. Okay, I needed to wake up and eat breakfast within 1 hour of being awake. And that meal had to be balanced of protein, fats, and carbs. So it was really what I now call like the strong resting, this how to regulate your nervous system, was the missing piece. Because when I had all this estrogen and progesterone, then my nervous system was fine. But when it was taken away, and we naturally start to lose muscle as we age, we absorb less protein as we age. So you need to be doing things that are building muscle. You need to be eating more protein, but you also need to be having a digestive system and a metabolism that is going to work with you, so that when you move, you can then rebuild and repair. So what I did was, instead of having the main thing I changed was, before, like, the training was the priority, and then the recovery was kind of like, well, it just kind of happens. The recovery wasn't intentional, but the training was the priority and the intention. And now the recovery is the intention, and I base my training around my capacity to recover. So if my body feels sore, I don't train hard on a sore body. It's like you have a black eye and you choose to slap yourself in the face. It's like, it doesn't work. Whereas pre-perimenopause, and you can start perimenopause when you're, for some people in their mid-30s. For me, I started to notice the difference at, I think, probably 42, 45. And so by the time you come out of perimenopause and you hit menopause, which is once you've had no menstrual cycle for 1 year. And what I love about menopause, what is amazing about menopause, is that things stabilize. So you're not on a roller coaster. Now you're like, oh, okay, this is where we're at. This is what we deal with. And then from there, you can really continue to just make good choices. So I base my training around strong resting. I don't see rest as lazy. It's like, because when we train, we actually break down. We're breaking down the tissues. And it's only actually when we rest, or when we sleep, and when we have the nutrition that is giving us health, that we rebuild and repair. If you're only ever just training and breaking down, that's actually not the pathway to strength in the long term. And I'm doing my movement for life. I'm doing it to enjoy life. I'm doing it to not be limited. I'm doing it for my mental health, for my physical health. I do it because there's a joy in doing it. Like when I meet people and they say like, oh, I've started running. I'm like, oh, cool. Like, do you really love running? And they say, no, I hate running. I'm like, well, why are you running? Oh, I want to lose weight. There's 1,000 different ways to lose weight. And actually running's unless you're sprinting, it's one of the least effective ways to lose weight. So I like to find joy in how I move, and I also invite challenge within that. So it doesn't have to be no pain, no gain. All of these very old, for me, are very dated mantras, and they definitely don't serve women who are over 50. And for women over 50, they have a lot of internal strength. They have a lot of mental strength, because by the time you get to 50, you have managed many different aspects of your life. You have managed probably taking care of other people, work, family, and then you're actually at the bottom of the care list. And if you have a family, you're probably the glue that keeps that family functioning and doing well. So for women in their 50s, they know how to push through. They know how to feel bad and carry on anyway. So then they keep trying to do the things that they used to do when they were 40 or 45. So that, I got a bit heavy, so I want to lose weight. I'll do this diet that I used to do. I'll do this workout that I used to do. And it's not just that it doesn't work. It makes things worse. And then mentally they're going, well, what's wrong with me? Or I'm a failure now. And it's just that you're doing the wrong things because you have changed. And sometimes, women can become so highly stress inoculated, which means you're so used to doing life in this tired and wired level, and you don't actually downregulate. So you're constantly here instead of here. And then, there's always life happening. So then more stress. Oh, you come up here, but you only ever come down to here. So when you're at here, you think like, it's okay. It's normal for me to wake up and my joints ache. It's normal to feel sad. It's normal to have no energy. It's normal to wake up 3 times during the night. It's normal to feel weak. It's normal to get very heavy. It's like, no, it's not. It's common. It's very common. And it's happening to a lot of people. That is not a normal part of the aging process. The normal part of the aging process is, yes, there is less muscle mass. Yes, our metabolism doesn't slow until we're in our mid-60s, naturally. We can still build muscle at age 104. A recent study done through the Katsu band company. They have a 104-year-old lady who builds muscle. So it's just, are you repeatedly doing things that are going to help offset this slow decline, or are you not? Do you want to be someone who has more autonomy in your life, or do you want to be someone who is limited and says like, well, no, or you get invited to go somewhere, and everyone else or your family or other people are like, yes, and you're like, I don't know if my hip's going to hurt. I don't know if I'll get tired halfway through and then I'll slow everybody down. Or you look at other things other people are doing and say, oh, well, they've always been a gymnast, so they love going to the gym. It's like, I don't go to the gym. I was never a gymnast. I was a filmmaker. and there are ways that we can put movement into our lives that are joyful and that also give us more energy rather than less energy. So a lot of women are training or moving, and then they don't have enough left for their other responsibilities in life. So it never feels in balance. So I hope that gives you some insights.
Absolutely, I love it, and I love the term strong resting. I hope that we can stick to that, we can understand that, because like you said, for a lot of people, resting sounds like a waste of time. I mean, like, I don't have the time to rest. I don't have the time to recover. It's being lazy. I don't have to rest so much. I mean, 8 hours of sleep is enough, even if you've not slept deep, right? And also, like you rightly said, there's been so much misinformation about women's health in the fitness industry. And like a lot of us must have heard the term where they say that women are not little men and we should stop training that way. Because I feel like we need to be a lot more, I mean, we've conditioned ourselves over the years to be more in touch with our masculine side when it comes to the career, or our goals, and we want to push harder, we want to achieve these things, and which is great. But along the process we really forget to be as balanced with the feminine energy, especially even for younger women when they have the menstrual cycles, the where everybody says, you can push through, there's no limits, and you can actually go and do the same workout you've been doing even on your period. And if you don't feel good, it's okay to take a step back, take a pause, and to really check with your own self if you can do this or you can't do this. So, and the same applies after 50 as well, that we definitely need to have this balance of this masculine and feminine energies, and need to see where we are with our physical and mental state currently after approaching 50s. And those are some great insights. I mean, the science that you shared behind so many things along with your personal experience, it's been amazing to know this. Thank you for sharing. This was very insightful. And talking about down regulating our nervous system, what are some of the things that have worked for you and for your clients? I am guessing that one of the things is the breath work that you do with your clients, right? And I'm not sure what it is. So can you just tell us, like, how is it different from so many other breathwork practices? And because I saw so many of these testimonials of your clients talking about how just that breathwork had a major impact on their sleep, and on the way their energy levels, on the way they showed up. So how does that work? How is it different? And how can we start doing that?
Yes, so breathwork's really interesting. So there's nothing new. I mean, nothing really new in breathwork. I mean, breathwork has been part of so many movement practices for thousands and thousands of years. And what's really cool about breathwork, but it's also very confusing for a lot of people, is that because we're doing it all of the time, people think, well, how can it be different? Because I'm just breathing. I've always been breathing. I'm breathing. So now you're telling me I'm not breathing well, or I'm not breathing right, or I'm no good at breathing. And it's like, no. Here's the thing. So breathwork is a really unique movement skill because it's something that we are all effective at. Amazing. Nobody stop breathing. Keep breathing. You're great at breathing. And there's also ways that we can be more efficient with our breathing, because how we breathe will determine what the oxygen uptake is in our cells, in our organs, and every system in our body, and how much blood flow goes to our brain. So our brain is a really, really oxygen hungry organ. Our brain takes like 40% of our oxygen. Like it needs it, it wants it, works it. And there's a saying which is, where oxygen goes, health flows. And just to connect back to the last kind of question and answer, is that with any movement and strong resting, you just need, if you have a health first approach, you'll have movement for life. And some people just don't have a health first approach. They're like, this goal at all costs. And it's like, well, okay, but are you consciously deciding that, rather than, but do I want to be able to move next week? How am I going to feel in 3 months' time? Like, oh, I could train for this and then burn out, and then I have adrenal fatigue for 3 years. Was it worth it? I don't know, you choose. But if you have a health first approach, it's very different. So how we oxygenate determines so many things. How we are going to recover our metabolism, which branch of our nervous system we are functioning in. So there are two branches, our fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. So the sympathetic, and then we have rest and digest, which is our parasympathetic. And how we breathe is both a reflection of, and it's the only unique system in our body that we can regulate as well. So it's kind of like you have a car which is on automatic. You're driving all the time, you're breathing all the time. It's so important we're not put in conscious charge of it, which is good, because if we were, we'd never get anything else done if we're just thinking about our breathing. So it's happening automatically, but we can become aware of it and change it at any time. And the effects of how we breathe are going to determine whether we are operating and doing life in fight or flight or rest and digest. And there's consequences downstream of all of that. And the biggest misconception that I've seen in the breathing world is that the more you breathe, the more oxygen you'll have. That's not correct. Just scientifically, there's no kind of like, well, I'm affiliated to this system or this lineage and these teachings. It's like, no, because the air we breathe in has to go through a gas exchange. And it's this buildup of, so this relationship between oxygen and carbon dioxide, how much we inhale how much we exhale. And then if you are breathing in through your nose and out through your nose versus in or out through the mouth. So this is another confusion for people. So they think that, well, I can take in more when I breathe through my mouth because look, it's bigger. I can take a big breath. Therefore, it must be better because more is better. More air is more oxygen, Juliet. And it's like, no. If you want more oxygen uptake in your cells, organs, and every system in your body, then you actually need to breathe less, because the oxygenation in our body happens more when we have a buildup of CO2. And a buildup of CO2 means we breathe less. And it sounds so counterintuitive. So when we breathe in through our nose, the air is filtered. So this was designed for breathing. This is the emergency valve. Like this does both. This is the emergency. This is the emergency for breathing. Amazing at eating. This is the primary for breathing, the emergency for eating. You can put, if you've seen people in hospitals or whatever, and they have something through their nose and liquids and nasty. Hopefully that doesn't happen to people. But when we breathe in through our nose, the air is filtered, it's warm, humidified, and we have nasal nitric oxide, which is a vasodilator. So the other type of cellular nitric oxide that people know about is Viagra. It's a vasodilator. So, and it's a really young gas. It was only discovered in the 90s. So this nasal nitric oxide increases our oxygen uptake. And then also if we're breathing here, this part of the lungs, and then up here, that it's really shallow and you will always be in fight or flight. If you're breathing fast, I mean, if you think about it, like if you just think, okay, how am I breathing when I'm shocked? You go, oh! Big wide mouth. How are you breathing when you're panicked? Like, oh my God, I can't, I don't know. It's fast and it's short. If you think of your happiest moments, when you feel at your best, how are you breathing? It's slow, it's calm. Your mouth is probably closed. And what's really different also is having the lips sealed. So a lot of people say to me like, oh, but I'm a nose breather, Julie. No, you're not. Unless the lips are sealed, the air is coming out. So what I do with clients, and I learned this through the Oxygen Advantage system, through Patrick McEwen, the Buteyko system. Patrick learned from Dr. Buteyko as well. And it's about restoring functional breathing patterns, because everything is happening downstream of how we breathe. So even if you think about a movement position or a posture or an activity you're doing, your body is going to prioritize how you breathe over everything else. So without water, we can go for maybe 1 week. Without food, depending on your size, a year. Breathing, 7 minutes, 8 minutes. So there's a hierarchy of what our body prioritizes, because every cell in our body is hardwired to survive. It has no long-term health plan for us. It's just get through the moment. So even if there are some mobility drills you're finding challenging, take a glass of water and hold water in your mouth and do them with water in your mouth, because this will force you to nasal breathe. It will make you more mindful of how you're breathing, which will probably slow down your breathing. Your mobility will change. I've seen it so many times, it's extraordinary. And I did it at a workshop just because people were getting dehydrated and I wanted everyone to be quiet. So I was like, okay, we're going to do all of this with water in our mouth. And people's bodies moved so differently. So there's a level of functional breathing that when you restore that, people sleep through the night, because our diaphragm is a muscle and we make it stronger, and our diaphragm and our pelvic floor are directly connected. So it's not unusual for women who have dysfunctional breathing to be waking up to pee in the night 3 to 4 times. And like I say, it's not natural. It's not like, oh, well, of course that should be happening now I'm this age. So, well, no, it's not. You just have dysfunctional breathing patterns. Right. And what's amazing is in 3 to 4 weeks, for 19% of the population, you can restore them. And the changes are phenomenal. And it's also the reason why, if you have an oxygen-starved brain, you have brain fog, your memory is off, you have anxiety, you don't have functional movement. So it's something that there's more awareness to it now, which is just wonderful. And so anyone who works with me, the first 3 weeks, we're doing movement snacks, we're looking at nutrition. but the priority for their training, depending on where they're at, if they come to me and they have functional, there's a test you can do. It's called the BOLT score, which is your body oxygen level test. You can find it on my YouTube channel. You can just Google it. Or it's sometimes called the control pause in the Buteyko breathwork system. And this will just give you a reading of when you're at rest, what is your tolerance for buildup of CO2. And if their BOLT score is quite low, I'm like, okay, this is your movement practice. This is your movement skill. And it's also why people who do a lot of mindset work, they don't change. Because if you have dysfunctional breathing patterns, no amount of mantras, intentions, or other things are going to shift your physiology to the level that your brain has oxygen. And when your brain has oxygen, you're happy.
True.
You have health. You can recover. A lady last week just said to me, "Oh, my creative thinking has come back." So her score increased by 10 over 3 weeks, and it put her in the functional breathing range. She noticed that when she went through her day, she would sigh. So sighing and yawning a lot during the day is a sign of over breathing. So a lot of people are just over breathing. She noticed that after she would sigh, she kind of couldn't think. Her focus, her memory, or there would be a level of anxiety. So people think they sigh because they have anxiety, and it's actually, no, the sighing helps. It's a kind of mirror. So the beautiful thing with breathwork is it's free. You're carrying it with you all the time. It's not something that you need to put in your bag, or you need a membership, and if the pharmaceutical companies could make what you can do yourself for free, they would prescribe everyone on the planet and charge a fortune for it, because the results are astonishing. Like it just improves every measure of your health. And it's also why people who live at altitude have really good health. Mm-hmm. There's less sickness, there's less cancer, there's better longevity, there's better bone health, because they have a better oxygen uptake, because they've adapted to live at thin air. It's really amazing. And it's why athletes will go and train at altitude, because then their oxygen uptake is more optimal and efficient. So everyone can train it. And what's the really cool thing is that the drills are so simple. You could teach them to a 5-year-old in 1 minute. They are so simple. So the first thing for anyone to do, just become aware. It's really hard to change something that you're not aware of. So become aware of, like, when during your day is your mouth open when you're not talking or eating? Can you hear yourself breathe? If you can hear yourself breathe and you're at rest, you're over breathing. Mm-hmm. And then there's just start by awareness. And for some people, they realize, like, wow, when I'm in that certain person's company, they're mouth breathing.
Right.
After they've eaten certain foods, they're mouth breathing. When they walk up a hill, they're mouth breathing. They walk around the house going, it's like, okay, you've just upset your respiratory biochemistry. You've literally taken oxygen uptake away from your brain. And then there's ways that you can just kind of quickly recover it and bring it back into balance. So there's three aspects to how to restore functional breathing. So there's the biochemistry, which is, we actually train people to breathe less. So you're breathing lighter and slower and deeper. So it's not big, it's light, slow, and then deep. And then there's the biomechanics, which is more into, like, okay, restoring mobility. Like, can your ribs move? Can you feel this expansion, this horizontal expansion? Everyone's obsessed with this big belly breath. It's like, well, yes, there should be a gentle rise on the inhale, but actually you want to feel this expansion horizontally, because that's a challenging situation. But when I'm concentrating and working creatively, I'm in a really deep flow state. My breathing will be slow, but it'll be heavy. Or how I'm breathing when I'm doing kettlebell swings, I'll do a specific breath protocol that gives me stability there. But during my recovery, in between the sets, I will do this light, slow breathing and you will recover faster. So even if you're doing a sport or an activity, I have a friend who goes to a bicycle spin class. And so when he's doing his sprints, he's mouth breathing, or he's in through the nose, out through the mouth. But then at the rest intervals, he's noticed that when he does breathing in through the nose and out through the nose, he recovers quicker. So there's just science behind this. It's not new, it's really old. There's just really simple ways that we can do it. And as we age as well, for women, we have less progesterone. And this is why some women in their 50s will suddenly start to snore, and maybe they didn't snore beforehand. But restoring the functional breathing patterns will alleviate that as well. So it's something that everybody can do. And the results are just like everything else you want to achieve is easier.
True.
Once you have functional breathing, it's just the hierarchy. It's like, fix this, everything's easier.
Right.
You'll get stronger quicker, you'll recover quicker. We only produce 50% of the digestive enzymes that we need when we're stuck in fight or flight. How do we know we're stuck in fight or flight? We're mouth breathing, we're over breathing. So you may put all this time and care and attention into your food, where you buy it, your preparation, but if you're existing in fight or flight, you're getting all of the calories and only 50% of the nutrients. That's such a lost potential. So what I say to people is, if you do this test and you have a number which is below the threshold for functional breathing, you have so much potential. Don't feel like, oh no, I'm terrible. I'm just like, oh, I'm so excited about how good you can feel. You probably have no idea how much energy, like cellular energy, you have, and the difference that makes to how you think and feel every single moment of every day it's a gift, and you have it, and you are the only one who makes it. And I love that it's free and it's autonomous, and you can change it pretty quickly. So, like I said, about 90% of the people you can change it in 3 to 4 weeks, which is just the most beautiful thing. So it's like, and it's a skill. It's a skill, because most of us are born nose breathers, but then life happens. Maybe as a baby you got sick, and you've always been. And if you had childhood asthma, something happened, but you can change that. That's why Patrick, my teacher, he had that. I've worked with people, and they no longer take any medication for their asthma. They have no exercise-induced asthma, no other asthma. It's phenomenal. Or maybe you had a trauma, something happened, and you never restored that breathing pattern. Life is happening to all of us, but your body, given the right knowledge and practice done consistently, it will heal. It has just the most incredible, it's not a silver bullet for like, okay, well, I lost my leg, is it going to regrow? Like, no, okay. But there are so many things that the body will heal, and it always wants to heal. I think that's important to emphasize as well.
Absolutely. That was very fascinating. I mean, breathwork truly can have such a major impact on our life. And just what you walked us through right now is very easy to do. It lies in how aware we are throughout the day about the way we breathe. And I think just this little shift can help us a lot to manage our stress and to sleep better, like from the testimonials that I saw and from what you said, because this would have a direct impact on how we manage our stress and, being aware in the moment where we are triggered or we are stressed. And, if we are in a stressful situation, how can we control that? And it will definitely help us be more in control in our life, and just having that sense of control in your life, I think it will have a greater impact on your sleep, on your stress management, on the way you feel. So this is just amazing. And the bit where you said about holding water in your mouth and then trying out a movement with your breath, I'm definitely gonna try that for myself. That sounds very interesting. Because
it's fun.
Because you do, even me, I've been training for a lot of years, and most of the time that's the only breathing I do, that's in through the nose and out through the mouth, and that's what many trainers tell us about, right? So I think this is a great way to include this and make it a habit, especially for someone who's a beginner, who probably is just starting some kind of movement this year, it would be amazing if they could start with this little trick from the first week itself, and it would become a natural thing for them to breathe through their nose, right? So this is a great practice. Thank you for sharing that. And this brings us to the end of the episode today. As we conclude, do you have any last messages or thoughts to leave us with?
Just that nobody's broken. Find joy in how you move, and see the world as a playground.
That's a beautiful message. Thank you, Dr. Julie, so much for being here today. And more power to you, to your creative work, and to so many amazing experiences that you share on a daily basis. There'll be links in the description below for the people who don't already follow you to go and follow you, to reach out to you, to learn a lot more from you, because there's just so much that you share through your profile that we can learn on a daily basis. Thank you so much once again for being here today and sharing these amazing insights.
Pleasure. Thank you for having me.
That's it for today's episode. I'm Sakshi Pawar and I'll be your host for the Settle or Be Better podcast. So stay tuned while I bring more inspiring stories.